My name is Riley Chen, and I'm 28 years old. For the past 3 years, I've been rebuilding my life after what I thought was the worst betrayal possible, until I discovered something that shattered everything I believed about family, loyalty, and the woman who raised me. It started with a notification. You know that feeling when your phone buzzes and something in your gut tells you not to look? That's exactly what happened on that Tuesday morning in October. I was sitting in my apartment, finally feeling stable after my messy breakup with Marcus 6 months earlier, when my phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. Riley, you need to see this. A friend who cares. Attached was a screenshot that made my blood run cold. It was a conversation between Marcus and someone named Luna Dreams 22 on a dating app. The messages were from 8 months ago, right when our relationship started falling apart, right when Marcus became distant, secretive, and eventually cheated on me with what I thought was some random woman he met online. But as I read through the messages, my hands started shaking. Luna Dreams 22 wasn't some random woman. The writing style, the specific phrases, even the way she structured her sentences, I knew this voice. I'd been hearing it my entire life. I understand you're going through a rough patch with Riley, Luna Dreams 22 had written. She can be difficult, always has been, even as a child. So demanding, so emotional about everything. My mother's words. My mother's exact words that she'd used to describe me, countless screamed. Not a little yelp or gasp, a full-throated, primal scream that probably had my neighbors calling the police. Because in that moment, I realized that every fight Marcus and I had, every moment of self-doubt, every tear I'd cried over our failed relationship, had been orchestrated by the one person I trusted most in the world. My mother had catfished my boyfriend. And from the looks of these messages, she'd done a lot more than just chat. I called the number that sent me the screenshot immediately, my fingers trembling as I dialed. "Hello, Riley." The voice was calm, almost amused. "I wondered when you'd call." "Who is this? How did you get these messages?" "Someone who's been watching your mother's games for a long time. Someone who thinks you deserve to know the truth about what really happened to your relationship." "I don't understand. Meet me at Riverside Cafe tomorrow at 2 p.m. Come alone. And Riley, bring your laptop. You're going to want to document everything I'm about to show you." The line went dead. I spent that entire night pacing my apartment. The screenshot burned into my mind. Every memory of my breakup with Marcus suddenly took on a different meaning. All those times he seemed to know things about me that I'd only told my mother. All those times he'd throw my insecurities back at me during fights. Insecurities that I'd shared with my mom during our weekly phone calls. "She's always been this way," Luna Dreams 22 had written to Marcus. "Jealous, possessive, she drove her father away too, you know? Some women just aren't built for lasting relationships. My father left when I was 12. My mother always told me it was because he couldn't handle having a family, that he was selfish and immature. But now I wondered what stories she'd told him about me." The next afternoon, I sat in Riverside Cafe with my laptop open, waiting for someone I'd never met to destroy whatever was left of my world. She walked in at exactly 2 p.m., a woman in her 50s with graying hair and kind eyes that somehow seemed sad. She ordered a coffee and sat across from me without introduction. "You look like your mother," she said quietly, "but you have your father's eyes." "You knew my dad?" "I was married to Marcus before you were." She extended her hand. "I'm Sarah Chen. Well, I was Sarah Chen for 3 years, until your mother decided she wanted my husband too." The cafe suddenly felt like it was spinning. "That's impossible. Marcus told me he'd never been married." "Marcus lies. It's what he does. But your mother, she's the one who taught him how to do it so well." Sarah pulled out her phone and placed it on the table between us. "Everything you're about to see is going to hurt, but you need to know what kind of woman raised you." She opened a folder labeled Evidence and began scrolling through dozens of screenshots, photos, and saved conversations. "Your mother has been doing this for years, Riley. She finds men in committed relationships and slowly works her way in. Sometimes she poses as a friend who understands what they're going through. Sometimes she pretends to be a younger woman online. She learns everything about their girlfriends or wives from social media, from mutual friends, from the men themselves, and then she uses that information to destroy the relationships from the inside. Sarah showed me message after message between my mother and Marcus, dating back over a year, long before I even knew there were problems in our relationship. She told him you were cheating. Sarah continued. Showed him fake screenshots of conversations between you and other men. She told him you were bipolar and refusing medication. She convinced him that you were planning to trap him with a pregnancy. Every lie was crafted perfectly, designed to hit Marcus's specific insecurities and fears. My mother had studied him like a psychologist studies a patient, learning exactly which buttons to push to make him doubt everything about our relationship. But the worst part wasn't the emotional manipulation. She slept with him, Riley, multiple times. In your apartment, when you were at work. In hotels when you thought she was visiting her sister. She even used your credit card to pay for some of the rooms. I found the receipts. Sarah slid a folder across the table. Inside were hotel receipts, restaurant bills, even parking tickets, all paid with my credit card, all on days when my mother claimed to be somewhere else entirely. How long have you known? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I've been tracking her patterns for 2 years, ever since she destroyed my marriage the same way. She did this to Marcus's girlfriend before you too, and the one before that. Sarah's eyes hardened. Your mother is a predator, Riley. She targets men in relationships, not because she wants them, but because she enjoys the destruction. She gets off on the power. I closed my laptop and pushed back from the table, feeling sick. Why are you telling me this? What do you want? I want to stop her, and I think you're the only one who can. Sarah reached into her purse and pulled out a thick envelope. Inside here is everything. Every conversation, every receipt, every photo. Evidence of at least 6 relationships she's destroyed over the past 5 years. But more importantly, there's something else. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. She's doing it again, right now. There's a man named David, married, 2 kids. She's been working on him for 3 months. His wife has no idea why their marriage is suddenly falling apart. The envelope felt heavy in my hands, weighted with the power to destroy my mother's life the same way she destroyed so many others. What exactly are you asking me to do? Sarah smiled, but it wasn't a kind expression. I'm asking you to give her a taste of her own medicine. I'm asking you to show her what it feels like to have someone she trusts turn her world upside down. I thought about Marcus, about all the nights I'd cried myself to sleep, thinking I wasn't good enough, thinking I was the problem in our relationship. I thought about my father and wondered what lies my mother had told him about me when I was just a child. But mostly, I thought about David's wife and kids. Somewhere out there, living through the same hell I'd experienced, completely unaware that their destruction was being carefully orchestrated by a woman who smiled sweetly and brought casseroles to church potlucks. Tell me what you have in mind, I said. Sarah's smile widened. First, we're going to save David's marriage. Then, we're going to make sure your mother never does this to another family again. She paused, her eyes glinting with something that looked like anticipation. But I should warn you, once we start this, there's no going back. Your relationship with your mother will be over forever. I looked down at the envelope in my hands, thinking about all the family dinners where she'd asked about my love life, all the times she'd offered helpful advice about my relationships, all the moments she'd held me while I cried over Marcus, knowing she was the reason for my tears. Good, I said. She stopped being my mother the moment she decided to destroy my life for sport. And that's when Sarah told me the plan that would change everything. The setup. The plan was elegant in its simplicity and absolutely devastating in its execution. Sarah had spent 2 years studying my mother's methods, documenting her patterns, learning her weaknesses. Now we were going to use that knowledge against her. Your mother has one fatal flaw, Sarah explained as we sat in her car outside my apartment building. She thinks she's smarter than everyone else. She's gotten away with this for so long that she's become careless, cocky. She documents everything because she enjoys reliving her victories. Sarah handed me a small device that looked like a regular phone charger. This is a Wi-Fi network mapper. When you plug it into an outlet at your mother's house, it'll give us access to her home network. From there, we can see every device she's connected, every app she uses, every message she sends. That's illegal. So is identity theft, fraud, and using someone else's credit card to fund your affairs. Your mother has committed dozens of felonies over the years. We're just leveling the playing field. The first step was gaining access to her house. Easy enough. I still had a key, and my mother was expecting me for our usual Sunday dinner. She'd been especially sweet to me lately, probably because she was getting off on the fact that she'd successfully destroyed my relationship, and I had no idea. "Remember," Sarah said as she dropped me off, "act normal. Don't let her know anything has changed. We need at least 3 hours of access to her devices to download everything." Sunday dinner at my mother's house had always been a ritual. She'd cook my favorite meal, we'd talk about my week, and she'd offer motherly advice about my life. Now, sitting across from her at the same dining room table where she'd comforted me after my breakup, I felt like I was having dinner with a stranger. "You look tired, sweetheart," she said, spooning more mashed potatoes onto my plate. "Are you taking care of yourself?" "I'm fine, Mom. Just adjusting to being single again." "I know it's hard, but honestly, I think you're better off without Marcus. He never seemed like the right fit for you." She shook her head sadly. "Some people just aren't capable of real commitment." I had to bite my tongue to keep from screaming. She was sitting there, playing the supportive mother, when she was the reason Marcus and I broke up in the first place. "Actually, I wanted to ask you about something," I said, pulling out my phone. "I've been getting these weird messages from someone claiming they knew Dad. They say he's been trying to reach out to me." My mother's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. "What kind of messages?" "Just someone saying Dad has been asking about me, that he regrets leaving. I thought maybe you might know something about it." The change in her expression was subtle, but I caught it. A flicker of panic, quickly replaced by concern. "Honey, you know your father left because he couldn't handle responsibility. If someone is claiming otherwise, they're probably trying to scam you. You should block them immediately." "You're probably right. I just thought, maybe after all these years, he might have changed." "People don't change, Riley." "Not really. Your father showed his true colors when he abandoned us, and Marcus showed his when he cheated on you. The sooner you accept that, the happier you'll be." While she was talking, I discreetly plugged Sarah's device into the outlet next to the dining room sideboard. The tiny LED light turned green, indicating it was connected to her Wi-Fi network. "I'm going to use the bathroom," I said, excusing myself from the table. Instead, I went upstairs to her bedroom. Sarah had given me a small USB drive that would copy the contents of any computer it was plugged into. My mother's laptop was sitting open on her dresser, probably because she'd been video chatting with David earlier. I plugged in the USB drive and watched as it began copying files. While it worked, I looked around her bedroom with new eyes. This was where she'd planned the destruction of my relationship. This was where she'd laughed about my pain. On her nightstand, I noticed a small notebook I'd never seen before. Inside, written in my mother's careful handwriting, were names and details about different men. Marcus was there, with notes about his fears of commitment and his relationship with his ex-wife. David was there too, along with detailed information about his marriage, his job, his children's names. But there were others. So many others. James Morrison, afraid of confrontation, wife doesn't know about gambling problem, vulnerable Tuesday afternoons when wife works late. Robert Chen, midlife crisis, feels unappreciated at home, responds well to praise in younger women. Michael Torres, recently lost job, ashamed, desperate for someone to believe in him. Page after page of men she'd targeted, manipulated, and discarded. Each entry read like a psychological profile, noting weaknesses and the best methods to exploit them. At the bottom of the last page, she'd written something that made my blood run cold. Women are so trusting, they never suspect their own mothers. The USB drive finished copying, and I quickly pocketed it before returning downstairs. My mother was cleaning up dinner, humming to herself like she didn't have a care in the world. "Feel better?" she asked. "Much better. Thanks for dinner, Mom. I should probably head home." "Of course, sweetheart. Same time next week?" I hugged her goodbye, and for just a moment I remembered what it felt like to believe she loved me unconditionally. Then I remembered Marcus and David's wife, and all the other women whose lives she destroyed for entertainment. "Wouldn't miss it," I said. Sarah was waiting for me in the parking lot of a 24-hour diner downtown. I slid into the passenger seat of her car and handed her the USB drive and photos of the notebook pages I'd taken with my phone. "Jesus Christ," she whispered as she scrolled through the images. "She's been doing this for years longer than I thought. Look at this. She has notes going back to 2018. What's our next move?" Sarah plugged the USB drive into her laptop and began scrolling through the copied files. Now we have everything. Her fake dating profiles, her conversations with David, financial records showing payments to private investigators she's hired to gather information on her targets' families. Sarah paused, her eyes widening. "Riley, look at this." She turned the laptop screen toward me. It was an email conversation between my mother and someone named Detective Morrison. She's been paying a private investigator to follow David's wife. She knows her schedule, where she works, what gym she goes to. And look at this. She's been collecting information about the wife's sister, too. The emails detailed a pattern I was starting to recognize. My mother didn't just destroy relationships, she systematically gathered intelligence on entire families, looking for weaknesses to exploit. "There's more," Sarah said, clicking on another folder. "She's been documenting everything with photos and videos. Look." The folder contained dozens of photos of my mother with different men. Marcus was there, looking happy and relaxed in ways I'd never seen during our relationship. But what made me sick was seeing photos of her in my apartment, in my bed, wearing my clothes. "She's completely delusional," I said. "She actually thinks she's the victim in all of this." Sarah pointed to a document titled Journal Entries. "Read this." I clicked on the most recent entry, dated just 3 days ago. Riley is finally starting to heal from the Marcus situation. She's still naive about what really happened, which is probably for the best. Some people aren't strong enough to handle the truth about love and relationships. I protected her from a man who would have eventually destroyed her, just like I protected her from her father all those years ago. David is proving more challenging than Marcus, but his marriage is already showing cracks. His wife suspects something, but doesn't know what. I've been careful to leave just enough evidence for her to find, nothing that points to me, but enough to make her question everything about their relationship. The funny thing is, these women always blame themselves first. They think they're not pretty enough, not interesting enough, not good enough. They never suspect that someone might be actively working to destroy their happiness. It's almost too easy. I felt like I was going to be sick. She destroyed my parents' marriage too, I realized. All those things she told me about Dad leaving because he couldn't handle responsibility, she probably drove him away the same way she drove Marcus away. Sarah nodded grimly. I've been thinking the same thing. But right now, we need to focus on stopping her before she destroys David's family. She pulled up another set of files. David's work schedule, his wife's routine, even information about their children's schools. She's planning something big. Look at this. Sarah showed me a calendar entry for the following Friday. D-Day, Phase 3. What's Phase 3? I don't know, but based on her other victims, it's when she usually makes her final move. She creates a situation where the wife finds undeniable evidence of the affair, but in a way that maximum humiliation and public embarrassment. Sarah closed the laptop and looked at me seriously. Riley, we need to make a decision. We can take all of this evidence to the police and let them handle it, or we can handle it ourselves. But if we do this our way, there's no going back. I thought about David's wife, probably lying awake at night, wondering why her husband had become distant and cruel. I thought about their kids, sensing that something was wrong but not understanding what. I thought about all the other families my mother had destroyed over the years. What did you have in mind? Sarah smiled, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I had an ally who was as ruthless as my mother. We're going to give her exactly what she's been giving everyone else, Sarah said, a taste of her own medicine. The trap. The plan we devised was beautiful in its cruelty and perfectly suited to my mother's particular brand of psychological warfare. If she wanted to play games with people's lives, we were going to show her what it felt like to be the target instead of the hunter. Sarah had connections I never would have expected, Former victims of my mother's schemes who had been quietly documenting her activities for years. There was Jennifer, whose husband my mother had seduced and convinced to empty their joint bank account before disappearing. There was Patricia, whose teenage son my mother had manipulated into believing his mother was having an affair, destroying their relationship for years. Your mother has a type, Sarah explained as we met with the group in Jennifer's living room. She targets successful men who are going through stressful periods in their lives. Job changes, family illness, financial pressure, anything that makes them vulnerable to someone offering understanding and comfort. But she also has patterns that make her predictable, Patricia added. She always creates a fake crisis to make her targets feel like heroes. She always gathers compromising information to use later, and she always documents everything because she gets off on the power. Jennifer handed me a thick folder. We've been building a case against her for 2 years. Financial fraud, identity theft, harassment, cyberstalking. We have enough evidence to put her away for a long time. But the police have been useless. They say it's all he said, she said, and that we should handle it as a civil matter. So we're going to handle it ourselves, Sarah said. The plan had 3 phases designed to systematically dismantle my mother's life the same way she'd been dismantling other people's lives for years. Phase 1, isolation. We were going to cut off her supply of victims by exposing her methods to her potential targets. Phase 2, humiliation. We were going to make her feel the same public shame and embarrassment she'd inflicted on so many others. Phase 3, justice. We were going to ensure she faced real consequences for her actions. The beauty of this plan, Sarah explained, is that we're not doing anything illegal. We're just using her own tactics against her, with one crucial difference. Everything we're doing is true. Phase 1 began immediately. Using the information we gathered from her computer, we identified her current targets and began systematically warning them about what was happening. David was first. Sarah called him from a blocked number, pretending to be a friend of his wife's who was concerned about some suspicious activity she'd noticed. I don't usually get involved in other people's business, Sarah said in a worried voice, but I think someone might be trying to scam your family. My friend Jennifer went through something similar. A woman befriended her husband online, gained his trust, and then used personal information to destroy their marriage. David was immediately defensive, which confirmed he was already emotionally involved with my mother. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not being scammed by anyone. I hope you're right. But David, if a woman named Linda started talking to you online about 8 weeks ago, someone who seemed to understand your problems better than anyone else, someone who made you feel like you could tell her anything, just be careful. Check your credit cards. Ask yourself how she knows so much about your personal life. Sarah hung up before David could respond, but the seed was planted. Within hours, he'd blocked my mother on all social media platforms and changed his passwords on every account. We did the same thing with the other men she was cultivating. Some listened, some didn't, but enough were spooked by our warnings that her supply of new victims dried up almost immediately. That's when she started getting desperate. I could see the change during our next Sunday dinner. She was agitated, distracted, checking her phone constantly. Everything okay, Mom? Fine, just some technical difficulties with my computer. I think someone might be hacking my accounts. That's awful. Have you changed your passwords? Several times, but it keeps happening. She looked at me suspiciously. You haven't noticed anything strange, have you? Anyone asking questions about me or our family? No. Why would they? I don't know. I just have a feeling that someone is watching me. She was right, of course. We were watching her. Jennifer had installed tracking software on her phone during a chance encounter at the grocery store. Patricia was monitoring her social media activity. Sarah was tracking her financial transactions. We knew she was panicking because her carefully constructed online personas were being exposed and blocked. We knew she was running low on money because several of her victims had frozen joint accounts or canceled credit cards she'd been using. We knew she was isolated because her potential targets were avoiding her. But we also knew she was planning something desperate. She's been driving by David's house every night this week, Jennifer reported during one of our evening meetings. And she started reaching out to some of her old targets, trying to reestablish contact. She's also been asking around about you, Riley, Patricia added. She called your old boss, claiming she was worried about your mental health after your breakup. She even contacted Marcus's sister, pretending to be concerned about his drinking. That's when I realized what she was doing. She was trying to create a new crisis, a new situation where she could swoop in and play the hero. And her new target wasn't some random man she'd met online. It was me. She's going to try to destroy my life in a different way, I told the group. She's going to make it look like I'm having a breakdown, like I need her help and support. Then she'll use that dependency to control me even more than she already has. Sarah nodded grimly. It's actually the perfect plan from her perspective. If she can't find new victims, she'll just go back to her original victim, you. That night, I got a call from my mother at 2 a.m. Riley? Thank God you answered. I need you to come over right away. Mom, it's 2 in the morning. What's wrong? Someone broke into the house. They didn't take anything, but they went through all my personal papers. I think they were looking for information about you. I knew it was a lie, but I played along. Should we call the police? No, we can't involve the police. This person, whoever they are, they have information about our family that could be embarrassing if it came out. I think it might be someone from your father's side of the family trying to cause trouble. She was trying to make me dependent on her again, trying to create a crisis that only she could solve. It was exactly what she'd done with all her other victims. I'll be right over. But instead of driving to her house, I called Sarah. She's making her move. Are you ready for phase 2? We've been ready for weeks. Are you sure you want to do this? Once we start, there's no taking it back. I thought about all the lives she'd destroyed, all the families she'd torn apart for her own amusement. I thought about the man I'd loved and lost because of her manipulation. I thought about the little girl who'd grown up believing her father abandoned her, never knowing the truth. Do it. Phase 2 was designed to give my mother a taste of her own medicine. If she wanted to manipulate and humiliate people publicly, then she was going to experience what that felt like. Sarah had created a comprehensive website documenting my mother's activities over the years. It included her fake dating profiles, screenshots of her conversations with married men, photos of her with her victims, copies of her detailed notes about their weaknesses and vulnerabilities. But the most damaging part was a video compilation of voicemails she'd left for various men over the years. Messages where she talked about their wives and girlfriends with shocking cruelty and contempt. Your wife is just jealous because she knows you've outgrown her, she said in one message to Marcus. She's trying to hold you back from becoming the man you're meant to be. Jennifer never appreciated what she had, she told another victim. She's one of those women who thinks marriage means owning someone. You deserve so much better. The website went live at exactly 8 a.m. on Monday morning, and within hours it had been shared across every social media platform. Someone had sent the link to the local newspaper. Someone else had forwarded it to her church group. By noon, my mother's phone was ringing nonstop with calls from people who'd recognized themselves in her victim database. But the real masterstroke was what Sarah had done with the information about David's family. Instead of letting my mother destroy their marriage, we'd used her own intelligence gathering against her. We sent David's wife a carefully crafted message explaining that someone had been attempting to manipulate her husband using personal information gathered about their family. We included enough details to prove we were telling the truth, but framed it as a warning rather than an accusation. Your marriage is being targeted by someone who specializes in destroying families, we wrote. This person has been gathering detailed information about you, your children, your schedule, and your relationship. They've been using this information to create problems between you and your husband, hoping to make him vulnerable to manipulation. We included screenshots of my mother's notes about their family, her photos of their house, her detailed plans for phase 3 of David's seduction. David's wife didn't just block my mother. She filed a restraining order and contacted the FBI about cyberstalking. By Wednesday, my mother's life was in complete ruins. Her church had asked her to stop attending services. Her neighbors were avoiding her. Her credit cards had been canceled after several fraud investigations were opened. And then she called me, crying hysterically. "Riley, you have to help me. Someone is destroying my life. They've put lies about me all over the internet. They've turned everyone against me." "What kind of lies, Mom?" "They're saying I've been interfering in other people's relationships. They're saying I targeted married men and tried to break up their families. It's all lies, sweetheart. You know I would never do something like that." I let her cry for a few minutes before responding. "Mom, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth. Did you know Marcus before we started dating?" Silence. "Mom, why would you ask me that?" "Because someone sent me screenshots of conversations between you and Marcus. Conversations that happened while we were together. Conversations where you were pretending to be someone named Luna Dreams 22. The silence stretched on so long I thought she'd hung up. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Mom, I have pictures of you in my apartment with Marcus. I have hotel receipts paid for with my credit card. I have your handwritten notes about his psychological weaknesses and how to exploit them." When she finally spoke, her voice was completely different. Cold, calculating, without any trace of the crying woman from moments before. "So what if I did? You should be thanking me. Marcus was going to hurt you eventually. I just sped up the inevitable. You destroyed my relationship for fun. You used my own credit card to pay for hotel rooms where you slept with my boyfriend. I saved you from making a terrible mistake. Marcus was never going to marry you, Riley. He told me so himself. He said you were too needy, too emotional, too much work. Because you convinced him I was. You fed him lies about me for months. I told him the truth about who you really are, just like I told your father the truth about what kind of daughter he was raising." And there it was, the admission I'd been waiting for. "What did you tell Dad about me?" "I told him you were going to grow up to be just like my mother, manipulative, selfish, impossible to please. I told him he should leave before you destroyed his life the way my mother destroyed my father's." My mother had driven away my father when I was 12 years old by convincing him that his own daughter was a threat to his happiness. She'd stolen my childhood, my relationship with my father, and my ability to trust my own judgment in relationships. "You're sick," I whispered. "I'm practical. Love is a game, Riley. There are winners and losers. I taught you how to be a winner. By destroying everyone who tries to love me, by protecting you from people who would use your feelings against you. Which, apparently, is exactly what someone is doing to you right now. Think about it. Who benefits from turning you against me? Who gains from destroying our relationship?" Even in complete ruin, she was still trying to manipulate me, still trying to make me doubt my own perception of reality. "Goodbye, Mom." "Riley, wait." I hung up and immediately blocked her number. But I knew she wouldn't give up that easily. My mother was a predator, and predators don't stop hunting just because their first attempt fails, which is why we had prepared Phase 3. The Reckoning Phase 3 was designed to ensure that my mother faced real, permanent consequences for her actions. Not just social embarrassment or temporary inconvenience, but actual legal accountability that would prevent her from destroying any more lives. Sarah had been working with a lawyer named Rebecca Martinez, who specialized in cases involving cyber harassment and financial fraud. Rebecca had been following our documentation efforts and was impressed with the quality of evidence we'd gathered. "This is one of the most comprehensive cases of systematic relationship fraud I've ever seen," Rebecca told our group during a meeting at her office. "Your mother has committed multiple felonies across state lines, using electronic communications to defraud victims of money, property, and emotional well-being." The evidence was overwhelming. Bank records showing unauthorized use of credit cards belonging to her victims. Screenshots of fake online profiles used to impersonate other people. Hotel receipts and restaurant bills proving she'd used other people's money to fund her affairs. Most damning of all, her own detailed notes documenting her methods and celebrating her successful destructions of multiple families. The challenge Rebecca continued, is that many of her victims have been too embarrassed or traumatized to come forward officially. We need someone who's willing to press charges and testify in court. Jennifer immediately raised her hand. She stole $12,000 from my joint account with my ex-husband. I have all the documentation. Patricia nodded. She convinced my son I was having an affair, which led to him cutting off contact with me for 3 years. I lost my relationship with my grandchildren because of her lies. One by one, the other women in our group volunteered to testify about the damage my mother had caused in their lives. But Rebecca was right. We needed more than just civil complaints. We need to catch her in the act of committing a new crime, Rebecca explained. Something current and undeniable that will make it impossible for her to claim these are all old misunderstandings. That's when I realized what we had to do. She's going to come after me next. She's lost all her other victims, so she's going to try to destroy my life in a different way. We can use that. Sarah looked worried. Riley, that's incredibly dangerous. Your mother is desperate now, which makes her unpredictable. If we use you as bait, we're not using me as bait. We're giving her exactly what she wants, access to me, and documenting every crime she commits in the process. The plan was simple, but risky. I would pretend to be vulnerable and in need of my mother's help, giving her the opportunity to manipulate and control me. But every interaction would be recorded, every financial transaction would be monitored, and every move she made would be documented by our team. I started by sending her a text message from a new phone number. Mom, I'm sorry about how our last conversation ended. I've been thinking about what you said, and I realize you were trying to protect me. I think I need help. Can we talk? She called me within minutes. Riley? Thank God. I've been so worried about you. Where are you? Are you safe? I'm at a hotel downtown. I can't go back to my apartment. There are people watching me. I think it's the same people who have been spreading lies about you online. What people? What are they saying to you? I could hear the excitement in her voice. She thought she'd won, thought she'd successfully convinced me that I was the real victim in this situation. They're telling me you're dangerous, that you've been manipulating me my whole life. They showed me photos and documents, but I know they must be fake. You're my mother. You would never hurt me. Of course I wouldn't hurt you, sweetheart. These people are trying to isolate you from your family so they can control you. It's a classic manipulation tactic. The irony was breathtaking. She was describing exactly what she'd been doing to me for 28 years. I'm scared, Mom. I don't know who to trust anymore. You can trust me, Riley. I'm the only one who truly loves you. Give me the address of your hotel. I'll come get you right now. While I was talking to her, Sarah was in the hotel room next door, recording everything through the listening device we'd planted in my phone. Rebecca was monitoring my bank accounts from her office, waiting to document any unauthorized transactions. My mother arrived at the hotel within 30 minutes, carrying a suitcase and looking like she dressed for a rescue mission. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, pulling me into a hug that felt like a trap closing around me. "I'm so sorry you've had to go through this alone, but you're safe now. I'm going to take care of everything." She immediately started isolating me from my support system, just like she'd done with her other victims. "First, we need to get you away from here. These people know where you are, and they're not going to stop until they turn you completely against me." "Where can we go?" "I have a friend with a cabin upstate. We can stay there until this all blows over." She pulled out her phone. "But first, you need to give me your phone and your credit cards. If these people are as dangerous as you say, they might be tracking you through your accounts." "I don't know, Mom. That seems extreme." "Riley, do you trust me or not? Because if you don't trust me, then they've already won." I handed over my phone and credit cards, knowing that Sarah was listening to everything through the backup device hidden in my jacket. "Good girl. Now I need you to write a letter to your bank, asking them to give me temporary access to your accounts, just until we can get this sorted out." "Why do you need access to my accounts?" "Because these people might try to freeze your assets or steal your identity. If your accounts are protected under my name, they can't touch them." She was doing exactly what she'd done to Jennifer and the others, gaining financial control under the guise of protection. But this time, we were ready for her. I wrote the letter, knowing that Rebecca was already in contact with my bank to prevent any actual unauthorized access. My mother immediately drove to the bank and attempted to gain control of my accounts, providing Rebecca with perfect evidence of attempted financial fraud. But she wasn't done. Over the next 3 days, she systematically attempted to isolate me from everyone I cared about. She called my boss and told him I was having a mental breakdown and needed extended time off. She contacted my friends and told them I was in a fragile state and shouldn't be disturbed. Most manipulatively, she began creating fake evidence to support her narrative that I was being stalked and harassed. "Look at this," she said, showing me her phone. "Someone has been sending me threatening messages about you. They're saying they're going to hurt you if I don't stay away from you." The messages were clearly fake. She'd created them herself using a second phone, but they were designed to make me feel like I needed her protection. "We should call the police," I said. "No, we can't trust the police. These people might have connections in law enforcement. We have to handle this ourselves." She was creating a complete alternate reality where she was the hero and everyone else was the enemy. It was the same tactic she'd used with Marcus, convincing him that I was the problem and she was the solution. But the most chilling moment came on the third night when she thought I was asleep. I heard her talking on the phone in the next room, her voice low and excited. "It's working perfectly. She's completely dependent on me now. I have control of her finances, her communication, her living situation. She can't make a move without me knowing about it. What about the people who were causing problems?" The voice on the other end was male, probably one of her former victims who was still under her influence. "They'll back off once they realize I have Riley completely isolated. Without her, they don't have anything. She was their key witness, and now she's on my side." What if she starts asking questions again? She won't. I've been giving her small doses of anxiety medication in her food. Nothing dangerous, just enough to keep her compliant and confused. By the time this is over, she'll be so dependent on me that she'll never question anything I tell her again. My mother was drugging me. I lay there in the dark, pretending to sleep, while she calmly discussed how she was chemically controlling my mind to make me easier to manipulate. It was beyond anything I'd imagined, even after everything I'd learned about her. The next morning, I pretended to be groggy and confused. "I feel so strange, Mom, like I can't think clearly." "That's just stress, sweetheart. You've been through a lot. Here, drink this tea. It'll help you feel better." I watched her add something to the tea when she thought I wasn't looking. Instead of drinking it, I poured it into a plant when she left the room and collected a sample in a small vial Sarah had given me. That afternoon, while my mother was at the store, I called Rebecca from the cabin's landline. "She's drugging me. I have a sample of whatever she's putting in my food." "Jesus Christ. Riley, you need to get out of there immediately. This has gone beyond fraud. She's committed assault." "Not yet. We need more evidence. She's planning something bigger." "It's too dangerous. She told someone on the phone that I'm her key witness and that she needs to keep me isolated until this blows over. I think she's planning to make me disappear completely." That night, I pretended to drink the drugged tea and acted increasingly confused and disoriented. My mother watched me with satisfaction, clearly believing her plan was working. "Riley, I need to talk to you about something important. You're not safe in your old life. These people who have been harassing us, they're never going to stop. I think we need to start over somewhere new." "What do you mean?" "I mean we need to disappear for a while. I have friends in another state who can help us establish new identities. New names, new social security numbers, new bank accounts." She was planning to kidnap me, to force me to abandon my entire life and identity so she could maintain control over me indefinitely. "I don't understand. Why can't we just go to the police?" "Because the police can't protect us from people like this. They're too well connected, too powerful. Our only option is to disappear completely." "What about my job? My friends? My life?" "What life, Riley? Look at yourself. You're a mess. You can't function without my help. These people have destroyed your ability to live independently. Starting over is the only way you'll ever be safe." She was using my confusion and disorientation caused by the drugs she'd been giving me as proof that I was incapable of taking care of myself. "I'll take care of everything," she continued. "All you have to do is trust me. Can you do that?" I nodded weakly, and she smiled with genuine warmth for the first time since this nightmare began. "Good girl. We'll leave tomorrow night. I just need to take care of a few loose ends first." The next morning, she left me alone in the cabin while she went to handle some business in town. The moment her car disappeared down the road, Sarah and Rebecca arrived with a team of federal agents. "How do you feel?" Sarah asked, as the agents collected evidence from throughout the cabin. "Like I've been hit by a truck. Whatever she was giving me, it's strong." The T sample tested positive for a combination of benzodiazepines and mood stabilizers, drugs that would have made me increasingly dependent and suggestible over time. "She wasn't just planning to kidnap you," Rebecca explained. "She was planning to chemically control you indefinitely. This is some of the most sophisticated psychological and pharmaceutical manipulation I've ever seen." Agent Morrison, the lead investigator, was documenting everything with obvious disgust. "We've been tracking cases like this for years, but we've never seen someone this systematic about it. Your mother has created an entire methodology for destroying people's lives." "What happens now?" "Now we wait for her to come back and arrest her for kidnapping, assault, fraud, and conspiracy. With the evidence you've gathered, she's looking at 20 years minimum." When my mother returned to the cabin that evening, she found me sitting at the kitchen table with Agent Morrison and Rebecca. "Riley, what's going on? Who are these people?" "Hello, Linda," Agent Morrison said. "I'm Agent Morrison with the FBI. You're under arrest for kidnapping, assault with a dangerous weapon, conspiracy to commit fraud, and about 15 other charges." My mother looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before, pure, undiluted hatred. "You little bitch. After everything I've done for you, you betray me like this?" "Everything you've done for me? You destroyed my relationship with my father. You sabotaged every romantic relationship I've ever had. You've been systematically destroying my life since I was a child. I protected you. I saved you from people who would have hurt you. You hurt me. You're the one who's been hurting me my entire life." As they handcuffed her, she looked at me one last time. "You'll never survive without me, Riley. You're too weak, too broken. You'll come crawling back, begging me to forgive you, and I won't be there." But I was already stronger than she realized. I'd survived 28 years of her manipulation and control. I'd survived the destruction of my relationship with Marcus. I'd survived learning that my entire childhood was built on lies. I'd survived her. The trial lasted 3 months. My mother was convicted on all charges and sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. The judge specifically noted the extraordinary cruelty and premeditation involved in her crimes. During the sentencing hearing, she tried one last manipulation. "Your Honor, I'm a sick woman who needs help, not punishment. I was only trying to protect my daughter from the same kind of abuse I suffered as a child." But the judge had read the psychological evaluation. "Miss Chen, you are not a victim. You are a predator who spent decades systematically destroying the lives of vulnerable people for your own gratification. You showed no remorse, no empathy, and no recognition of the harm you caused. You represent a danger to society that can only be addressed through incarceration." After the sentencing, I stood outside the courthouse with Sarah, Jennifer, Patricia, and the other women whose lives my mother had destroyed. "How do you feel?" Sarah asked. "Free," I said. "For the first time in my life, I feel completely free." But the real victory wasn't just my mother's conviction. It was what happened next. Rebecca had been working with law enforcement agencies across multiple states to identify other victims of similar schemes. Our case became a model for prosecuting systematic relationship fraud, leading to dozens of other arrests and convictions. David and his wife attended marriage counseling and managed to save their relationship. Marcus reached out to me with a genuine apology, explaining how my mother had manipulated him into doubting everything about our relationship. Jennifer got her money back through a civil lawsuit. Patricia reconciled with her son and met her grandchildren for the first time in years. Most importantly, we created a support network for other victims of family manipulation and abuse. We started a website, a hotline, and support groups in major cities across the country. The last thing I did was write a letter to my father. I'd found his contact information in my mother's files. She'd been monitoring him for years, probably planning to use him against me at some point. I sent him copies of the trial transcripts and a letter explaining what had really happened when I was 12. He called me the next day, crying, "Riley, I'm so sorry. I never should have believed her. I never should have left you alone with her." "You couldn't have known, Dad. She's very good at what she does. Can I see you? I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'd like to try to have a relationship with my daughter." "I'd like that too." We met for coffee the following week. He looked older than I remembered, but his eyes were the same kind eyes I'd loved as a child. "I want you to know that leaving you was the biggest mistake of my life," he said. "Not a day has gone by that I haven't regretted it. Your mother convinced me that I was damaging you just by being there, that you'd be better off without me. She told me you left because you couldn't handle having a family. I left because I thought I was protecting you from what I believed was my own inadequacy as a father. She had me convinced that I was the problem, that I was holding you back from having a normal life." We talked for hours, sharing stories and memories, slowly beginning to rebuild the relationship that my mother had destroyed 20 years earlier. The most beautiful moment came when he showed me a photo he'd carried in his wallet for 2 decades, a picture of me on my 12th birthday, just weeks before he left. "I never stopped loving you, Riley. I never stopped hoping that someday I'd get the chance to be your father again." "You never stopped being my father, Dad. You just stopped being around." 6 months later, he walked me down the aisle at my wedding to a man I'd met in one of our support groups, someone who understood what it meant to rebuild your life after systematic manipulation and abuse. My mother sent a letter from prison, claiming she was sorry and asking for my forgiveness. I read it once and threw it away. Some people don't deserve second chances. Some people don't change. Some people are exactly as dangerous as they appear to be. But some people, like me, like my father, like all the women who stood up to my mother, are stronger than their worst experiences. We survive. We heal. We protect others from the predators who tried to destroy us. And sometimes we get justice.